Hello everybody. I want to shed some light on the economic side of the transaction and takeover of SOE by ColumbusNova. Because for once this is my field of study and hopefully this will help you see things from a different perspective. My focus for this video is not on the emotional aspect of the current layoffs, but nevertheless I want to thank the whole development team for this awesome game. I wish you all the best for the future. I will give a brief overview about what is happening at SOE and Daybreak games. Firstly, I want to show how such a takeover is usually handled and who the general players are. In a second step, I will describe those specific players in more detail and break it down to our specific case with SOE. And after that, I will give some predictions on how things will develop, what to expect, etc. Finally, I will give my personal opinion on what is a healthy relationship towards PlanetSide 2 in such hard times as these, including the future of this YouTube channel. Feel free to check the corresponding timestamps and additional information in the description. Let's start off with the takeover and the general players. Normally you have an institutional investor that wants to diversify his portfolio and wants to invest in a specific industry but has no knowledge about that industry, thus uses a middleman. There are different ways to do so, and one of them is to invest in a private equity fund. From the fund's perspective, the procedure is segmented into several steps: fundraising, investment, value enhancement, and finally exit. As you can see in the diagram, the fund will search for investment opportunities, in this case a portfolio firm. It acts as an intermediary. That means there is no direct contact between the investor and the portfolio firm. In the case of venture capital fund, you will generally see monitoring and management support. This could mean replacing the management with trained professionals. But this could also mean that the fund wants to get their guy in to have a closer look on what's going on and how the investment develops. Also, there may be additional funding to improve the growth possibilities. However, this will differ a bit when looking at a private equity fund. Private equity fund will usually invest in an already established business. This means, depending on the situation, less supervision may be needed. Instead, the focus is on making the investment profitable as soon as possible. This may include decreasing expenses and increase cash flow. The cash flow is extremely important because normally such a takeover is leveraged and the fund has to pay interest and services this by taking a cut out of the cash flow. Additional cash flow may either be reinvested in the portfolio company or extracted and passed along to the original investor. As with every investment that is leveraged, it can go both ways. If you have a profit, it will be multiplied, but if you have a loss, it will be multiplied as well. That is also the reason why the fund needs to achieve a profitable balance sheet and break even with cash in and cash out, otherwise it will run out of money pretty quickly. After the value enhancement is finished, the fund will normally sell the portfolio firm via an IPO or sell directly to another company in M&A fashion. Latter is called a trade sale. Another possibility is to sell the firm to another fund, called secondary purchase. If the fund is not able to turn the investment into a success and is unable to sell it as a whole, it will usually liquidate the firm and sell it in pieces. However, this makes much more sense for companies with physical property because it is easy to put a price tag on that. After a successful exit, profits will be passed along to the original investor. The fund normally receives 2% fee on capital committed for the initial takeover, and then 20% for any profits that exceeds the earlier agreed minimum reward. I will give you a quick and dirty example. The investor wants a 15% of return and invests 100 million in the fund. The fund will receive 2%, namely 2 million as a fee for managing this money. After a year, the fund will sell the firm for 120 million and make 20% rate of return. This leaves for the fund 1 million. Why 1 million? Because there was a surplus of 5 million after the promised 15% minimum rate of return. Thus 20% times 5 millions are 1 million. You can clearly see that the fund is very interested in not only achieving an overall profit, but also exceeding the minimum rate of return. Otherwise the fund won't make much money for all the work. Depending on the contract, the fund is normally under pressure to exit its investment in a certain time frame to pass along the profits to the original investor. Okay, now we have a look at the specific players and our case. Let's start with Sony. As many of you know, Sony has financial problems. It burned quite a lot of money, and in order to continue with operations, it sold some of its assets to gain some much needed cash. While the gaming and network services seem to perform quite well lately, the PC segment, or at least SOE, was not considered a strategic asset and thus sold. Why Sony sold SOE at this point is not 100% clear for me. However, by this time SOE is heavily invested in the PS2 launch for PS4, and thus its strategic value declined, because the new owner would push the PS4 release no matter what. The next player is SOE itself. For you PS2 players out there, it's worth mentioning that SOE has a whole plethora of games in its portfolio. With the takeover, SOE is also free to pursue a Xbox One launch of PS2. Now we have a look at ColumbusNova. It's actually segmented into several parts. I would assume that the ColumbusNova's private equity group is responsible for the takeover. Their intentions from a financial standpoint are pretty clear, as stated before, but information on how they want to achieve the financial success are pretty scarce at the moment. What we do know, however, is that there were significant numbers of layoffs. This includes a lot of the PlanetSide 2 development team and also the other divisions like EverQuest, etc. If you have a closer look at which position actually was scrapped, you see that base designer, game developer, build master, producer, vehicle dev, and some of the quality assurance got ditched. Also keep in mind Matthew Higbee just tweeted that he announces retirement as PS2's creative director. Right after the takeover was announced, Reddit user davegods described pretty much 3 scenarios. And in one of them he stated that when Higbee is leaving, that this will be a very bad signal for PS2's future. He also said that Smedley won't be a good signal because he may either be stick around just because he's some kind of earnout, or he might be getting a payoff just because the buyer wants their man in. This also means, in his perspective, that they intend to drain SOE for money, minimizing cash outflow, reducing costs, reducing investment, and maximizing revenue, which is immediately paid over to the investors. For me, this is an indication that the content creation is on hold, or not even on the roadmap at all. This includes new bases, continents, vehicles, the resource revamp, more strategic depth, in short, the possible new meta game.
Yeah, that's what I expected.
However, what we will still see is the new content in the form of cosmetics, player studio, maybe implants, some maybe pay to win, etc. Why is that? I can only guess at this point, but for me it makes sense. Cut the costs by all available means. At the same time, make sure that further profit is still possible, hence the still maintained cosmetics segment. What we also know is that there is an unusual silence coming from SOE and Daybreak games. SOE was always pretty open about their PlanetSide 2 projects, and although there were problems with the roadmap, communication was still maintained. However, this drastically changed with the takeover. Maybe it is just a type of gag order that will be lifted later on. From this point on, there are several ways how SOE and Daybreak games could develop further on. This is all speculation, but let's check my predictions. The first one would be the PC development is on hold, only on live support. We will see the PS4 launch, followed maybe by Xbox launch. Then after that, these teams either get a layoff or maybe return to the normal development cycle. What you can see here is that we have already 2 years of content for the console players, and this will earn them quite some money with extremely limited investment and extremely limited risk. What this means, however, for the PC is we will see declining income for Daybreak games from the PC side. We will see a declining player base, veterans jumping the boat, outfits will merge or die, and we will probably also see some server merges. This all in all is a pretty pessimistic outlook. Another scenario would be that the PC is on hold for now, only on live support for now, but after the PS4 launch, in case it is a big success, the team will return and there will be additional investment in PS2's development. We could also see a third scenario where ColumbusNova re-evaluates the whole investment, and this could either be good or bad, we will see. For the long term, however, we will maybe see a sale to another company, and this could include splitting the IPs. That means that, for example, EverQuest or EverQuest 2 will be sold separately from PlanetSide or DC Universe, H1C1, etc. This may improve PlanetSide's future, or it may seal its fate completely. Now we will check the outlook, how to handle this difficult situation, and what this all means for this YouTube channel. Now that we talked about the financial aspects, what would I recommend at the very moment for all PlanetSide 2 players out there? I'm not 100% sure, but I can tell you what I will do. I will hold all investments, membership and station cash until I see 2 things happen. First thing is improved communication by ColumbusNova and Daybreak games. What do I mean with this statement exactly? I want to know how ColumbusNova wants to proceed with its investment. Do they want to invest more, or do they just want to milk the cash cow? I want a new roadmap by Daybreak games, and I want to know who is working on what. Deadlines for certain milestones would highly be appreciated, because it will show if Daybreak games can actually deliver with what little staff that is left. And I want the gag order to be lifted so that the employees can start the communication again with the community for feedback and discussion about the game. The second part that has to happen is a strong commitment from ColumbusNova towards Daybreak games' PS2 PC division. At the moment, all information indicates that PlanetSide 2 for PC is on live support only. In my opinion, this is no basis for investing money in the game. Spending money at this point is like giving it straight away to ColumbusNova and the original investors. Neither the remaining developers nor the development will see any of that money. When I started this game in beta, I was amazed by its charm, and I was intrigued by the roadmap. There was a vision and a good future for this game and my intention for spending some money on the game was to support the game development above all. Now I don't have the feeling that my money would contribute in any way to further development. This feeling is shared by a lot of my outfit mates and other PS2 players that I talk with. Unfortunately, this comes at a time where PlanetSide 2 is already struggling. Many players didn't like the lack of content in the last few months. To be fair, this is due to the PS4 launch. But nonetheless, a lot of veterans took a hiatus because they felt a lack of strategy and depth. And they were bored by the redeploy side and team deathmatch side of things. I thought that after the PS4 launch, the normal development of content would resume. But as it stands right now, This is unlikely, and until proven wrong, I will refrain from spending money on the game. What can you expect from this YouTube channel? I will continue releasing PlanetSide 2 content. Will there be as much content as before the recent events? We'll see, but probably yes. However, this depends on how my outfit is tackling the crisis. Will there be non-PlanetSide 2 related content in the future? Probably also yes. Although PlanetSide 2 will remain the backbone of the channel for the foreseeable future. In the time to come, I want to cover some of my favorite games. Some of them, especially great indie titles and mods, have hardly any publicity yet. And finally, I want to leave you with one good statement by Carey, former PS2 producer. He said, "Play it until it isn't fun anymore. Don't stress about the future too much, it will fuck you up. Play for fun." Thank you for watching, guys. I hope this content helped in understanding the current situation. Leave your questions and constructive feedback below. Sabotsas out.